Okay, so this is one of the 2 unconference talks that we've got in this slot. It's a 40-minute slot, so, well, 45, so we've got 20 minutes per talk. Apparently it may not run on too long, and it's more about, like, getting some questions from people and trying to talk about things. So, yeah, we're here to learn about systemd user sessions.
Thank you. Hi, so in case you don't know who I am, I'm Ian. I'm working on the Canonical desktop team. This is sort of about some... So it's not completely new stuff. Obviously, GNOME's had systemd user sessions for a long time. It's more about getting more stuff running under systemd user sessions, really. So this is following on from some work we did in Unity about a bit over a year ago. A few of us, Martin Pitt, Seb, myself, and Ted Gould from the Canonical various teams got together, a little hack fest, and we got Unity 7 running under systemd. Like everything was launched by systemd, and we made a little proposal upstream about how this stuff should be structured. And then this year in April, as you probably all know, there was a slight change of direction announced on the desktop. So Unity is now no longer really a thing for us. We're going with GNOME Shell. So there's been a lot of work to transition all of that stuff over, and suddenly I remembered about all of this work, and I thought, oh, I wonder if GNOME has any of this stuff there. And it turns out there's sort of some of it, but not all of it. And yesterday I spent a little bit of time doing like a little proof of concept demo of how you might run more of GNOME inside systemd user sessions. And I found some related bugs and stuff. So people, this is nothing new. People have been thinking about this stuff already. I just thought, maybe I'll use this time to have a bit of a discussion with the room and perhaps kickstart people thinking about it. And then maybe if people are around the next few days, we can work on a bit more of this stuff upstream. So I noticed this bug the other day. This virtual machine is a stock like daily image of what's going to be Ubuntu 17.10 when it was released. We have this bug where you log in. Oh, that opened in my real session. Annoying. So you log in, you open a terminal, and then you need to know I've logged in on this VT as well. So this is simulating like I've SSH'd into my desktop, and then I've logged in, and I've done some work, and then I've logged out, and then I've logged back in again the next day when I've come back to work the next day. That's kind of what's going on there. Where's that session? There it is. So I log out, and log back in again. So this is everything as sort of vanilla-ish kind of GNOME experience. Yeah, it takes a few seconds, and then if I manage to reproduce this bug, I press Ctrl-T to launch a terminal. No terminal comes up. Now what's happening here, I haven't actually debugged this a lot. It's that it's trying to debus activate the GNOME terminal server, and then there's some weird state left over from the previous session, right? So eventually, in about 30 seconds, it's going to time out, and then I'm going to see a terminal, and then I'll be able to show you the journal that's showing all of these weird error messages. So this is the bug. This is the user bug. There you go. That we saw that reminded me that we should probably look at this stuff. So if I just look at the journal, I don't know how much of this you can see, but there's all sorts of weird, like, stuff is refusing to connect to other things, to the bus, and loads of weird, like, problems are happening in this session. And all I've done is SSH'd in, logged out, logged back in, and things haven't been killed correctly. Now, I happen to know there's some patches for GNOME Session, I think, which are meant to mitigate this, but it just sort of reminded me about all of the other work. So if I just get rid of this VM, go back to this one, which is the one that I did the proof of concept in. If I make it resize. Okay, if it would resize, that would be really nice. Maybe I can, oh, for God's sake. I'll reset the thing, see what happens. Sorry about this. I expected the resolution change to take effect. Oh, whatever. Okay. So I should turn off this one. This is the spice. Yeah, but hang on. There we go. So I had the thingy installed, which automatically resizes based on the size of the window, and this was getting confused with the resolution change, I think. So this is a session. Like I say, I know this is not particularly new work, but you can see that I have launched this GNOME shell as a systemd unit instead of it being spawned by the GNOME session.session file and all of that stuff. Since I've had to restart it, I've lost all of the stuff I opened to show you, but we wrote this, where is it? Oh, God's sake. It's called run systemd session. This is like the terrible script that we wrote to activate all of the stuff. So I'll show you all of the weird hacks that we had to do, and then maybe we can talk about what we should do properly. Config systemd user. So big list of all of the units that I wrote to make this stuff work. So these are dbus, type equals dbus. Welcome to Ubuntu. Type equals dbus units so that everything starts up in the right order. So GNOME shell is requiring GNOME session to be started, and GNOME settings daemon, and GNOME settings daemon itself is requiring GNOME session to be running. So you can have a look at some of these. They're just straightforward units which start stuff, do stuff. And then we have this weird script which sort of dealing with, if you're logging out and logging back in, it's dealing with like clearing up all of the stuff that's hanging over from your previous session. So this is all related to that bug I showed you a minute ago. So you log out, there's processes running, and we've got all of these units as being part of this systemd target. So we're able to sort of control and make sure we kill all of this stuff on the session logout, and loads of weird like stuff that we did here. So you can see that like we have a bit of code to make sure that no units are marked as failed, so that when you log in again, everything else gets tried to be restarted, and then another weird hack to there's some kind of dependency ordering thing going on in systemd where if you have, so we have two targets. We have one called graphical session pre and one called graphical session. So one of them is for like stuff that should run really early in your session. So that's like if you have any migration code or any weird stuff like that. And graphical session is like, stuff that should run in any graphical session. But then we found some weird systemd problems where the dependencies weren't correctly marked as being transitive and all of this weird stuff, right? And then updating the environment and doing strange things. So why might we be interested in doing this? We might be interested because gets us away from using XCG autostart for stuff which we start from in the session, which is really cool because it means we can parallelize things, we can start things with dependencies properly. And we can get the user up to a working session in a faster way and a more robust way. And also another big benefit that you get from this is that you can, as you saw in this unit here, this stuff here, if some stuff in your session crashes, you get nice auto respawning and recovery stuff, and you'll get this all for free from systemd. So we've done this in like a weird hacky way, like with scripts and writing lots of units downstream and stuff. So if anybody's interested in working on this in GNOME, I would love to have a bit of a chat now and maybe figure out a time to do this stuff later in the week. Possibly I've got some related bugs open which you might be interested in looking at. So this is one on Bugzilla, this one, integrate better with systemd, where some people propose some of this similar stuff. And there's a link to a YouTube video where Martin talks at the systemd conference about this kind of stuff in more depth. And there's also stuff about bugs like related to the one that I showed you at the beginning. So that was the presentation half of my stuff, but maybe we can talk about like what the best way to do this upstream is and stuff, and if people have ideas about what we could do differently or better and whatever, or if you have any questions about how we did things.
I was curious to understand the. Thanks for the presentation. By the way, I was curious to understand the bug. Does it only happen because the bus is not a session bus? It's tied to the actual user, right? So that's why it happens when you're logged into VT.
I haven't fully understood the bug yet, but I was just showing it because it's the sort of thing that is fixed by doing this stuff. I haven't fully understood it, and I don't know whether we'll fix it by doing something to kill all of the processes when you log out of the graphical session, or if we'll just sort of mask it over by switching to this stuff. But yes, it's to do with user bus and things not being torn down completely when you log out of the session in the presence of the user bus, and weird lifecycle management issues that you get. And in addition to this bug, also obviously anything that was talking to dbus in the previous session and is trying to work in the new session, like GNOME keyring and any of this stuff is completely busted. So it's actually kind of bad.
Yeah. And then the other question I had was what's kind of the end goal of it? Like, you know, how like what's the ultimate scope when you have something like systemd for the user session? Like, is the goal to replace GNOME session entirely, or to, you know, is there anything left in there after you migrate all these things out to systemd that's still useful?
I don't know, actually. It would be good to hear from a GNOME session maintainer if there's anybody in the room. Is that you?
Maybe as close as one as you're going to get here, maybe.
Okay, so the goal, so having an MTED XDG auto starting and starting as much stuff as possible instead of from the GNOME session file from the systemd units would be really great. And also, well, I guess there's still some API possibly surface left in GNOME session to handle sort of like sending signals to the processes like you need to die now, or like, but then again, things can just look at logInd directly maybe and like know when their XDG session dies and do that themselves. Maybe GNOME session wants to help them out with that. I don't know. It's the kind of thing that we want to talk about.
I think it comes to mind the only thing that really GNOME session does is sets up the XSMP, I think it's called. Okay.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, not under Wayland, but that's the way that GNOME Shell and Mother are, you know, they notify the session manager that they have started, so that it can go to like the next phase of initialization. So maybe we don't care about that anymore because X, whatever. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
something we need to do that if we still care about X.
Yeah, thanks.
It looks like it's on. One of the reasons why we might want to switch to systemd as a user, I'm the last person to comment on the other bug, the one that posted the link to the video. Right?
Oh, yeah. Hi.
One of the reasons why we might want to do that is, first of all, you've seen the number of org.gnome.settingsdaemon service files that you had to create.
Yes, of course.
We use the same session definition in GDM and in GNOME in a normal user session. Half of those are stubs when they are run inside GDM because they're not useful. So you wouldn't need to start those for a GDM session. So that would be a pretty big win already. I actually
didn't look at the GDM session yet, so you're right.
The other thing is that once we get systemd as the overall manager for the session, that means we've got a C group manager, and we can start doing interesting things with applications that have been put inside C groups, like all the flat-packed applications. That means that eventually on machines which don't have a real suspend mode, for example, we would be able to turn devices off, throttle down most of the applications, but still allow them to access, to do, I don't remember what it's called, but networking, to actually do network even though the machine is supposed to be suspended.
Oh, yeah.
That's the sort of thing. Maybe you could suspend all of your applications if you're running like a full screen game or video that you're playing back to cut down on processing power, or even, you know, make sure that they never use more than X% of the CPU, or don't grow in RAM too much. Be able to tell applications that memory in the system is being scarce and could they please do something. All that sort of thing is requires you to have an overall manager and the applications to be inside C groups. Systemd user allows us to do that, and for us to be able to go to the next step in desktop technology, we need that.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good. So yeah, especially if you have these applications being dbus activatable, it's really easy to add systemd units for them, isn't it? And then you get the full power of anything that you can do from the system.
And you can sandbox them a bit further, even if they're inside the system. If you use systemd, there's
all of the hardening features that you have.
Right, exactly. And about GNOME Session, there's a bunch of services that are currently living inside GNOME Session itself, like the session inhibition, all that sort of thing. It wouldn't be that much work to already move them to a separate daemon, like in the very short term, and just leave GNOME Session to do launching in the very short term and kill off that part as soon as we get systemd user.
Yeah.
So there are things, low-hanging fruit, stuff that we could already do to go a bit further in implementing that feature.
Okay. Thanks.
So one thing I'm just concerned is you are talking about killing or making useless XDG autostart, and that's one of the, let's call it, APIs that we give to the ecosystem. So even though it would be nice from our perspective to be XDG autostart, I have an empty XDG autostart, we still need to make sure that we still handle that. So maybe something like a systemd unit generator, like those would exist, which would convert a .desktop to a services would be useful, and maybe also it could be also used for all the other applications that we can launch as a desktop file. So that would be handled as systemd services.
Yeah, I don't think I have the tab open, but I actually saw somebody had written one of these generators already. It exists. I haven't tested it, but it exists, and that's probably the way to go, at least in the short term. And actually, when we did this in Ubuntu, we managed to do I didn't mention this, but we did it as a soft transition, so you could opt into doing systemd user sessions. And the way we did this with respect to XDG autostart is you add an extra directory to your data directories. And if this is present, then it just masks all of the XDG autostart files. So you can sort of, you can opt in and opt out even on a per autostart thing. Like as you convert your units, you make one of these masking things, and it just turns it off if you're running the stuff. Which that's maybe one way to go.
About XDG autostart, it really depends on what the application that's being autostarted actually is. In an awful lot of cases, it's a background daemon for a desktop application. For example, something that pulls your email.
GNOME Software has one.
Yeah, GNOME Software. This is exactly the sort of thing that you would want the sandbox services or even the system services to be able to tell. You've got facilities in systemd to allow you, for example, to launch the application every 5 minutes because you know that it's going to be short-lived. This is exactly the sort of thing that you would probably do. Every 5 minutes, it's going to attempt to pull your email if the network's available. It's going to attempt to see if there are updates. You don't actually need the thing to be running all the time in the background. And an awful lot of those services, I think, will need to look on a case-by-case basis whether it makes sense for them to be running all the time in the background. Most of the time, probably not. We just need to make sure that for those particular use cases that we've actually thought of, like pulling stuff from the network, we provide a great facility that makes it even better than it used to be. It doesn't use RAM all the time because it doesn't need to be running all the time. It just every 5 minutes, we give the hand to it. We make sure that it doesn't run for absolute ages, and then we can shut it down and provide notifications that are going to be persistent as well, all that sort of thing. But it really needs to be on a case-by-case basis. If you think that there are cases where XDG autostart is being used for something else, then yeah, please do come and join the conversation, because I think that we could probably find a solution that would be both elegant and useful for third-party developers that want to integrate into the desktop.
Okay, so that's probably all we have time for the first track, for the first slot of this track. So
cool.
thank you very much, Ian.
Cheers.